You know what you need to do?
What?
You need to get on your knees.
I do.
And ask for forgiveness. Jesus tells us that there's only one sin that will not be forgiven, and that is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. And Mika,
Yes.
during Governor Mike Huckabee's run for the presidency, you blasphemed the Holy Spirit day in and day out. Yes, you did.
Right.
Well, you know what? Let's ask an authority about that.
Okay.
Governor Mike Huckabee, it is so good to have
Great
you
to
on
be
set.
back.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Well, good, good. So what's going on? What are you up to?
I was just telling Willie I've got my own hot dog cart at 57th and 8th Avenue now.
Really?
And, yeah.
Position.
Now, let me ask you, is it yours or you have the split revenue? Do you have a backer? You have a front man?
No, I'm just leasing it, for the next couple of weeks to see how things work out.
Well, that's great. That's
Excellent.
great. Other than that, how are things going?
No, things are going well. There is a life after a campaign, but you don't know it when you're in the middle of it because it's so intense and you spend 20-hour days, 7 days a week, never stopping. And, we're trying to just sort of sit down, decompress, sort through, and see what's next.
Yeah, well, how about writing a book? Because I always tell friends about going to Iowa, going to all these other campaign places, and I went into one in particular, had more people there, more organization, more hidden rooms. You, of course, never saw the candidate. It was the most impressive organization I've ever seen. And then I said, hey, let's go to Huckabee's event tonight with Chuck Norris. We drove over there. I walked backstage. Nobody stopped me. Went in the green room, sat down there for a while, had a donut, went out back, saw your bus, had four more donuts, went out back. And there was one guy outside your bus, and I was like, is the governor in there? They're like, yeah. Can we see him? He was like, sure. And we walked in, and there you were in the bus with Chuck Norris and Ed Rollins. It was amazing. And you won Iowa by how many points?
By 9 points.
By 9 points. What happened? What have you figured that out yet?
Yeah, I mean, it was the fact that the people who really wanted to see a candidate that they felt like represented them, they were not intimidated by the amount of money we didn't have or that somebody else did have. And it was all heart, and it was an incredible story. And I think it is very interesting if people understood how many of the supporters we had who didn't have big checks to give us, but they gave us their time, their heart, their soul. People didn't understand. They bought their own yard signs, their own caps and T-shirts. We didn't provide that stuff. We didn't have the resources. It was an amazing story, and there is a story behind the story that I think is very fascinating.
Please tell me there's not an opium trade coming out of Afghanistan.
No, not that I know of.
Then what's the story behind the story?
Or is that in your book?
Well, let me give you an example. There was a lady in Birch Run, Michigan. We did a rally there. And as I'm coming out, walking the rope line and talking to people, she reaches up and says, I don't have any money, but I want to help your campaign, and hands this ring. And I'm just stunned, and I said, well, I can't take that. She says, no, I want you to take this and use it for the campaign. My husband and I both believe in what you're doing. We want you to, and I said, she said, you have to. Pressed it in my hand and took off. I'm still looking for her.
Oh, my gosh. That's an incredible story.
Yeah.
We have two other things. So I want to ask you about John McCain, but before that, we have fun on the set here, the blessing, but you are very seriously a minister. And I want to know what you thought of Barack Obama's speech yesterday, and if you thought he was able to punch through any of the problems facing our country.
There are two different stories. One is Obama's reaction. The other one is the Reverend Wright's speech itself. And I think that, Obama has handled this about as well as anybody could. And I agree, it's a very historic speech. I think that it was an important one and one that he had to deliver, and he couldn't wait. The sooner he made it, maybe the quicker that this becomes less of the issue. Otherwise, it was the only thing that was the issue in his entire campaign. And I thought he handled it very, very well. And he made the point, and I think it's a valid one, that you can't hold the candidate responsible for everything that people around him may say or do. You just can't, whether it's me, whether it's Obama, anybody else. But he did distance himself from the very vitriolic statements. Now, the second story, it's interesting to me that there are some people on the left that are having to be very uncomfortable with what Lewis Wright said when they were all over a Jerry Falwell or anyone on the right who said things that they found very awkward and uncomfortable years ago. Many times those were statements lifted out of the context of a larger sermon. Sermons, after all, are rarely written word for word by pastors like Reverend Wright, who are delivering them extemporaneously and caught up in the emotion of the moment. There are things that sometimes get said that if you put them on paper and looked at them in print, you'd say, well, I didn't mean to say it quite like that.
Put them on
But
YouTube.
I mean, you never came close to saying 5 days after September 11th that America deserved what it got, or that the American government invented AIDS.
Not defending his statements.
I know you're not. I know you're not. I'm just wondering, though, for a lot of people, would you not guess that there are a lot of independent voters in Arkansas that vote for Democrats sometimes and vote for Republicans sometimes, that are sitting here wondering how Barack Obama's spiritual mentor would call the United States the U.S. KKK?
I mean, those were outrageous statements, and nobody can defend the content
what's
of
the
them.
impact on voters in Arkansas?
I don't think we know. I mean, if this were October, I think it would have a dramatic impact. But it's not October. It's March. And I don't believe that by the time we get to October, this is going to be the defining issue of the campaign and the reason that people vote. And one other thing I think we've got to remember, as easy as it is for those of us who are white to look back and say, that's a terrible statement. I grew up in a very segregated South. And I think that you have to cut some slack. And I'm going to be probably the only conservative in America who's going to say something like this. But I'm just telling you, we've got to cut some slack to people who grew up being called names, being told you have to sit in the balcony when you go to the movie. You have to go to the back door to go into the restaurant. And you can't sit out there with everyone else. There's a separate waiting room in the doctor's office. Here's where you sit on the bus. And you know what? Sometimes people do have a chip on their shoulder and resentment. And you have to just say,
It's a true
I
experience.
probably would too.
Yeah.
I probably would too. In fact, I may have had a more of a chip on my shoulder had it been
I
me.
agree. with that.
We just don't
I
know.
really
It's the
do.
Atticus Finch line about walking a mile in somebody else's shoes. I remember when Ronald Reagan got shot in 1981, there were some black students in my school that started applauding and said they hoped that he died. And you just sat there, and of course you were angry at first, and then you walked out and started scratching your head going, boy, there's
a
some
problem.
deep resentment there.
Yeah. But it
All
was
right.
a fascinating speech, and it was
Hey.
interesting to hear your insight.
By the way, if McCain's
Candidate-
smart, he'll pick you as his vice president. If he
Any
does,
word on that?
If he does, we're crowding into the observatory
Yeah.
in D.C.
Do you mind?
We love Northwest Washington.
I already
Is that
know what I
okay?
would do with the front room. That's okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Mika,
Thank you. What?
good Lord.
All
All right, so when you come back,
huckster.
when you come back, we're going to have a bass guitar for you.
He keeps saying that.
And I'm going to have my guitar.
And we're going to do
play.
some serious Hendrix or something that will rock this place.
Exactly. We're going to rock this house, baby. All right. Governor Mike Huckabee, write a book. You made
will do
history
so.
this
Yes.
campaign.
Come and co-host.
And also come
But you
and
have to plug
co-host.
it.
Are you kidding?
We are so shameless right here. We are so
Carried
in
you
the
through the whole
tank.
campaign.
I am in the tank.
Hey,
I
by
have
the
been.
way, just for the record, one more time,
Yeah.
your success was due in large part to...
Two?
Morning Joe.
All right,
There it
boom,
is.
there he is. All right, thanks a lot, Governor.
Thanks,
We'll
guys.
see you soon.
Okay, take care.
We are going to be right back.